Chidi, I beg you, I have no other way out." The chilling words echoed in the dimly lit hut as Oliver knelt before her brother. Her voice was trembling, her eyes red and swollen with unshed tears. This was not the way things were supposed to be, but life, as they knew it, had taken a sharp turn toward the unimaginable. Once upon a time, in the village of Ihenze, there lived a woman named Oliver. Ihenze was a vibrant and thriving village, known for its fertile women, lush farmlands, and deep-rooted traditions. The women of Ihenze were admired far and wide for their beauty and grace, their fertile wombs that bore many children, a blessing that the people believed was granted by the gods. But for Oliver, that blessing seemed like a distant dream. Oliver and her younger brother Chidi were the children of Ngozi and Obinna, a couple well respected in the village. Obinna had been a great hunter, and Ngozi was known for her healing hands and wisdom. The family was admired, envied even, but everything changed when a mysterious sickness swept through Ihenze one terrible season. The village had lost many to the illness, including Oliver's parents. Suddenly, Oliver found herself as the sole caretaker of her little brother Chidi, who was still too young to fully comprehend the depth of their loss. The days that followed were dark. The once lively hut that Oliver and Chidi had grown up in was now filled with sorrow and silence. Oliver was left with the responsibility of raising her brother, a burden that weighed heavily on her shoulders. She had always been known for her beauty, with deep brown skin like the rich soil of their farmlands, long black hair that cascaded down her back, and eyes that could draw in the strongest of men. Suitors often came knocking, but after the death of their parents, Oliver's heart was far from marriage. Yet, life in Ihenze had to go on. Oliver married, as was expected of a woman her age, but something strange began to unfold. Despite her youth, her beauty, and her health, she could not conceive. Months turned into years, and whispers started to fill the air like the rustling of leaves before a storm. Villagers gossiped behind her back, claiming she had been cursed, that perhaps she had angered the gods. No one knew why Oliver, of all people, could not bear a child. Her husband, Ugochukwu, once gentle and loving, grew bitter over time. He blamed her for the emptiness of their home, for the quiet nights without the sound of a child's laughter. In Ihenze, a woman's worth was often tied to her ability to bear children, and Oliver's womb had become a symbol of her shame. Ugochukwu, like many men in the village, sought solace in the arms of other women, leaving Oliver alone with her despair. Her marriage crumbled, as did the next and the next. 3 husbands, 3 failed marriages, and not a single child to show for it. The shame was unbearable, but no matter how much she prayed, how many sacrifices she made at the village shrine, the curse remained. It was on one sleepless night, as she stared at the thatched roof of her hut, that Oliver remembered something her mother had once told her when she was just a girl. "Oliver," Ngozi had said, her voice soft but full of warning, "there is an old tale of a curse that runs in our family. It is said that once, long ago, one of our ancestors angered the gods. She was unfaithful, and as punishment, the gods cursed her womb and the wombs of her descendants. Some say the curse can only be broken by something unspeakable." But Ngozi had never finished the tale, and Oliver, young and carefree at the time, had laughed it off, thinking it was just another one of her mother's stories. Now, as she lay in the dark, that long-forgotten warning clawed its way back into her mind. Was this the curse her mother had spoken of? Had the gods truly sealed her womb because of the sins of an ancestor? Desperation took root deep within her, and Oliver knew that if she did not act soon, she would die without ever feeling the joy of motherhood. In Ihenze, a woman who could not bear children was pitied, often shunned, and Oliver's heart could not bear any more sorrow. She turned to the elders, to the diviners, and even to strange rituals. But all the remedies, all the charms and prayers, failed her. One day, as she returned from yet another fruitless visit to the village priestess, Oliver stumbled upon an old woman sitting by the riverbank, far from the village. The woman's skin was wrinkled and sagging, her back bent with the weight of age, but her eyes were sharp, like twin blades that could cut through the soul. "You seek answers, child," the woman said without looking at Oliver. Startled, Oliver hesitated but eventually sat beside the woman. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice small. "I know many things. I know of the curse that plagues you. I know of your barren womb." Oliver's heart pounded in her chest. "Can you help me?" The old woman turned to face her, and the smile she wore was unsettling. "There is a way, but it is not a path for the faint-hearted." "I will do anything," Oliver whispered. "I am tired of suffering. I just want a child, please." The old woman leaned closer. The curse can be broken, but only by an act as twisted as the curse itself. The blood of family must mix, the bonds of kinship must be violated. Oliver felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? You know what I mean, child. The gods demand something unnatural. You must lie with your own blood. Oliver recoiled in horror, her mind racing. The old woman's words were vile, twisted, but the seed of desperation had already taken root in her heart. She had tried everything else, and nothing had worked. Could this be the only way? Could this unthinkable act truly break the curse that had tormented her for so long? The old woman's voice echoed in her ears as she walked back to the village. If you want a child, you know what must be done. That night, as the moon hung high in the sky, Oliver lay awake, her thoughts spiraling into darkness. She glanced at Chidi, her brother, who was now a young man. He had grown up quickly in the years since their parents' death, his once childish face now hardened with the weight of their struggles. He trusted her completely, loved her fiercely. How could she even consider such a thing? But the desire for a child, the need to break free from the curse, gnawed at her soul. And so, she knelt before her brother, her voice shaking with fear and shame. Chidi, I beg you, I have no other way out. Chidi stared at his sister, his heart pounding in his chest, not fully understanding the weight of her words. He had always loved and respected his sister. After their parents' death, Oliver had been his world, the one person who shielded him from the cruelty of life in Ihenze. He would have done anything for her, but what she was asking now was something beyond his comprehension. Sister, what are you saying? Chidi asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. You want me to... Oliver's eyes were wild with desperation. She couldn't even look at her brother as she spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. Please, Chidi, the curse, it's real. It's our family's curse. I've tried everything. This is the only way. The gods demand it. The gods? Chidi echoed, horrified. What gods would ask for something so... evil? Oliver let out a strangled sob, clutching her chest as if her heart was about to break. I don't know. I don't understand it myself. But I have no choice. I can't go on like this. I've been humiliated, rejected. I've lost everything. The women in the village laugh at me. The men pity me. And I am nothing without a child. Nothing. Chidi stood up, pacing the room, his mind swirling with emotions he couldn't control. He loved his sister, but the thought of doing what she asked filled him with revulsion. How could he betray her in this way? How could he betray himself? Oliver broke down completely, her body shaking with sobs. Then I am doomed, she cried. Do you understand? I will die without ever knowing what it feels like to hold my own child in my arms. I'll be cast aside, ridiculed and forgotten. You are my only hope, Chidi. If you love me, please help me. The weight of her words pressed down on Chidi's soul like a heavy stone. He wanted to run, to flee the suffocating pressure that filled the room, but he couldn't leave Oliver like this. His heart ached for her. He remembered how she had taken care of him, sacrificed her youth to raise him after their parents died. He owed her everything. But this, could he really cross this line? The silence in the room was deafening as Chidi stood still, torn between his love for his sister and the horror of what she was asking. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. I need time to think, he whispered. Without another word, he left the hut, his footsteps echoing into the night. Oliver collapsed onto the floor, weeping until she had no more tears left to shed. For the next few days, Chidi avoided Oliver, finding every excuse to be away from the hut. He wandered the village, lost in thought, his mind replaying their conversation over and over again. The village of Ihenze was alive with its usual bustle. Children playing in the dirt roads, women gossiping as they went to the market, and men returning from the farms. But to Chidi, everything seemed distant, muted. He was consumed by the weight of what his sister had asked of him. As he wandered, Chidi found himself standing before the shrine at the edge of the village, where villagers came to offer sacrifices to the gods. He looked up at the imposing figure of the deity, carved from dark wood, its eyes glaring down at him. The gods of Ihenze were feared and respected, known for their wrath as much as their blessings. What kind of gods would ask for such a thing? He muttered under his breath, his fists clenched in frustration. Just then, an old man, one of the village elders, approached Chidi. His name was Ihenze, and he was known for his wisdom and his close connection to the gods. "Why do you stand here, troubled young Chidi?" the elder asked, his voice calm and steady. Chidi looked at the elder, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "Elder Ease, I need to understand something. Is it true that the gods would curse a family, generation after generation, because of the sins of generations? But would they demand something so vile, something unnatural to break such a curse?" Easy sighed deeply, his eyes filled with sorrow. "The gods are not always merciful, Chidi. There are times when they ask for things that defy our understanding, that challenge the very essence of who we are. If they have been angered, there are few limits to what they might demand." Chidi's heart sank at the elder's words. It was as if the world was closing in on him, leaving him with no escape. "But Chidi," Easy continued, "you must understand that not all things demanded by the gods are meant to be fulfilled. Sometimes the gods test us to see if we are willing to defy them for what is right. The question you must ask yourself is this: what are you willing to sacrifice? Your soul or your sister's future?" The elder's words struck Chidi like a thunderbolt. He had been so consumed with fear and confusion that he hadn't even considered the possibility that the gods might be testing them. Could it be that this was all a test, to see if they would stand against the horror of what was being asked? Chidi bowed his head, conflicted more than ever. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "Only you can decide, Chidi," Easy said softly. "But remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is to protect someone from themselves." Back at the hut, Oliver had grown weaker with each passing day. Her desperation had turned into despair, and the emptiness inside her had deepened. She spent her days in silence, waiting for Chidi to return, waiting for an answer. When Chidi finally returned, his face was pale, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Oliver rose to meet him, hope flickering in her eyes. "Have you decided?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chidi nodded slowly. "I have." Oliver's heart raced. "And?" Chidi took a deep breath, his heart heavy. "I love you, Oliver, but I can't do what you're asking. No matter how much I want to help you, I can't betray you in this way. I won't. We will find another way." Oliver's face crumbled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But there is no other way," she cried. "You're condemning me to this curse forever." Chidi grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "No, Oliver, I won't let you believe that. The gods may have cursed us, but I refuse to let them break us. We will find a way, even if it means defying the gods themselves." Oliver collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Chidi held her tightly, his own tears mingling with hers. He didn't know if they could truly escape the curse, but he knew one thing for certain: they would not let the gods win by destroying what little they had left. Days turned into weeks, and Oliver's despair deepened. Chidi tried his best to comfort her, but the burden of the curse weighed heavily on both of them. Word of Oliver's condition spread through the village, and the whispers grew louder, more vicious. People began to avoid her, fearing that her curse might spread to them. One fateful evening, as the sun set over the village, a violent storm swept through Ihenze. The winds howled, tearing through the crops and shaking the huts. The villagers huddled in their homes, fearing the wrath of the gods. But it wasn't just the storm that they feared, it was what the storm brought with it. As the winds roared outside, Oliver and Chidi sat in their hut, the air thick with tension. Suddenly, there was a deafening crack of thunder, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The doors of their hut flew open, and a chilling wind rushed inside. In the doorway stood a figure, shrouded in darkness, its form barely visible through the storm. Oliver gasped, clutching Chidi's arm. It was the old woman from the riverbank, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "You defied the gods, child," the old woman hissed, her voice carrying over the wind. "You refused their will, and now you must pay the price." Chidi stood in front of Oliver, shielding her with his body. "We will not submit to this," he said, his voice firm. "You can take everything from us, but we will not commit such evil." The old woman let out a cruel laugh. "You think you have a choice? The curse will claim her, one way or another." With a flick of her wrist, the old woman summoned a gust of wind that knocked Chidi to the ground. Oliver screamed as the old woman advanced toward her, her hand reaching out like a claw. But just as the old woman was about to touch Oliver, a blinding light filled the room. The storm ceased in an instant, and the old woman froze in place, her eyes wide with fear. A figure stepped into the hut, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. It was Ihenze, the elder, his face calm and serene. "The gods do not demand such cruelty," Ihenze said, his voice gentle but powerful. You are not a servant of the gods. You are a creature of darkness, preying on the vulnerable. The old woman screeched, her form twisting and distorting, but Ihenze raised his hand, and the light grew brighter. With one final scream, the old woman vanished into the night, leaving nothing but silence in her wake. Oliver collapsed to the floor, her body trembling with relief. Chidi rushed to her side, holding her tightly as Ihenze stood over them. The curse is real, Ihenze said softly, but it was never meant to be broken by such evil means. The gods test us, but they also grant mercy. You are free, Oliver. The curse has been lifted. Oliver looked up at Ihenze, her eyes filled with tears. How? How can it be? Ihenze smiled, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. Because you chose love over fear. You chose to defy the darkness, and in doing so, you freed yourself. In the weeks that followed, the village of Ihenze was abuzz with rumors of what had transpired in Oliver's hut. Some believed that the storm had been the wrath of the gods, sent to punish Oliver for her defiance. Others whispered that Chidi had made a secret pact with the gods to save his sister. But no one could deny that something had changed. Oliver, once shunned and pitied, began to regain her strength. Her beauty, which had withered under the weight of the curse, returned, and she walked through the village with her head held high. The whispers that had once surrounded her turned into words of admiration and respect. She had defied the curse, and in doing so, she had earned the village's reverence. Chidi, too, found a new sense of purpose. The bond between him and Oliver had deepened, and he no longer saw himself as just her younger brother. He had become her protector, her confidant, and together they faced the world with a newfound strength. But even as life returned to normal, there was a lingering unease in the air. The storm had passed, but its memory remained. The villagers feared that the gods had not forgotten what had happened, and that there would be consequences for defying their will. One evening, as Chidi and Oliver sat by the fire, Ihenze visited them once again. His face was calm, but there was a shadow in his eyes. The gods are merciful, he said, but they are also just. You have broken the curse, but there is always a price to pay. Oliver looked at Ihenze, her heart sinking. What price? Ihenze sighed, his expression somber. The gods have granted you freedom from the curse, but in return they have taken something else. The curse on your womb has been lifted, Oliver, but you will never bear a child. The words hit Oliver like a blow to the chest. She had fought so hard, endured so much, all for the hope of holding a child in her arms. And now, that hope was gone. But Oliver began, her voice breaking. Ihenze placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. The gods have been kind in their own way. They have given you a life free from the burden of the curse. But this is the price they ask in return. You are free, Oliver, but motherhood will not be your destiny. Tears streamed down Oliver's face as she nodded, accepting the cruel truth. She had fought for so long, and now, in the end, the gods had taken away the one thing she had wanted most. But even in her sorrow, there was a sense of peace. The curse that had haunted her family for generations was gone, and she and Chidi were free to live their lives without the shadow of the gods hanging over them. The years passed, and life in Ihenze continued. The village grew, its people thriving under the blessings of the gods. Oliver, though she never bore children of her own, found fulfillment in other ways. She became a mother to the village itself, taking in orphan children, guiding young women who struggled with the pressures of marriage and motherhood. Her wisdom became sought after, and her kindness was known far and wide. Chidi, too, found his own path. He became a respected leader in the village, known for his courage and loyalty. He married and had children of his own, but his bond with Oliver remained unbreakable. As the years went by, the story of Oliver and the curse became legend, told around fires on quiet nights. It became a tale of love, sacrifice, and defiance, of a woman who had the strength to stand against the gods themselves, and of a brother who had saved her from herself. In the end, it wasn't the curse that defined Oliver's life, but the choices she made to rise above it. The village of Ihenze remembered her not as the cursed woman, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. And so, as the sun set over the village one last time, Oliver sat by the riverbank, watching the water flow peacefully by. She smiled, knowing that she had lived a life of meaning, despite the trials she had faced. The gods had tested her, but she had proven that love and defiance was stronger than any curse. And in the quiet of the evening, as the wind whispered through the trees, Oliver knew that she had finally found peace. I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more captivating tales like this. Goodbye.